Ahead of us, it's week 1, and key games will include the defending national champions, Georgia, number 3 ranked in the country this year, taking on number 11 Oregon. That game is in Atlanta. You'll see it Saturday afternoon on ABC. Meanwhile, on 7th ranked Utah, coming off a Pac-12 title and a Rose Bowl berth, will visit the Swamp to take on Florida as the Gators begin the new era under their new coach Billy Napier in Gainesville. And then the big one, Saturday night, the traditional powerhouse Columbus game in Columbus, number 5 Notre Dame, number 2 Ohio State, just the 7th all-time meeting between these two legendary programs. And Vegas does not expect much of a game. Ohio State is a 17.5-point favorite. That information was relayed to the coach of Notre Dame, Marcus Freeman, yesterday. Here's what he thought of it.
Well, I didn't know that. I'm going to write that down. You said 17.5 points, right? We'll use that in the team meeting today, It's good to know. I haven't paid much attention to the spread, but I remember that one time we were on College Game Day, I said just keep making go up and up.
So he says those are fighting words. Here are Heather and Paul with the very latest. Paul, what did you think of that? 17.5 points. He's putting it up on the bulletin board. What do you think?
Greeny, is Newt Rockne rolling over in his grave that the Notre Dame coach is feeling disrespected because somebody in Vegas doesn't make him the favorite? I mean, this is really ridiculous because everyone knows Ohio State, or should know, that Ohio State is one of the best teams we've seen in a long time. And Notre Dame is going through a transition. So Coach Freeman, we all love you, but calm down. And I know Notre Dame fans are ready to get angry again, Greeny. When I was here a couple weeks ago, I dared to say that they were going to lose this game. I think I heard from Lou Holtz. I heard from pretty much every Notre Dame fan in the world, with the exception of Pope Francis.
but from what I understand, he's trying to get your number, and it just hasn't worked out. Heather, here's the question I got a lot of people asking me. Okay, we think Ohio State is one of the top 2 teams in the country. Maybe they look better than Notre Dame. But how can Notre Dame be the 5th ranked team in the country and be a 17.5-point underdog? Those two things don't seem to go together, Heather. How do we explain them?
Well, Notre Dame being the underdog has a lot to do with what Paul just said, but they're also missing their leading wide receiver, Avery Davis, who is out with a torn ACL for the rest of the season. They have already thin position. Nobody behind him has caught more than 20 catches, and only one player with starting experience. So they have to figure some things out offensively. I talked to Marcus Freeman, and he told me their number 1 priority is running the ball. But defensively, Greeny, this is a big reason why they're the underdog, is because they're going against the number 1 offense in the country with C.J. Stroud at quarterback, a Heisman contender. They've got Travion Henderson at running back. I mean, they've got Jackson Smith and Jigba at wide receiver. They've got to stop that running game, and Marcus Freeman told me that they want to have Stroud hold on to that ball just a little bit longer so that they can fluster him and force him into some mistakes. But that is a tall challenge for the Irish.
Let's talk about what's at stake here, okay? Because some might look at it and say because Notre Dame doesn't play in a conference and the rest of their schedule isn't what it might be if they played in the Big Ten, as Ohio State does, that they need this game more. But if I wanted to make an argument, Heather, this game is in Columbus. Ohio State looks like they are going to have a huge season. That if Notre Dame plays them tough, and Notre Dame, if they lose 36-10, then all bets are off. But if they lose this game 36-30 and they're right in it in the 4th quarter, I would argue this game actually might wind up working in their benefit as the season goes on. How do you assess what's at stake for the Irish on Saturday night?
Well, how they play matters, and you pointing out that 2 scenarios in the scores is extremely important, because if you're an independent like Notre Dame, you have to remember the selection committee protocol requires everyone in that room to deem them unequivocally one of the 4 best teams in the country. What does that mean? That means there's no doubt in that room that they're among the 4 best teams. And Greeny, here's why, if it is a close game, you don't write them off entirely. Remember, they play Clemson and USC. What happens, Greeny, if they win the rest of those games on their schedule? Clemson wins the ACC, and USC, by some chance, wins the Pac-12. You've got a 1-loss Notre Dame with a close loss to probably the Big Ten champs and 2 wins against Power 5 conference champions. you're looking at a very strong resume for the Irish without a conference championship game. But the reality here is if they lose that game, they've got to win out and they have got to look the part, because I go back to that protocol, unequivocally one of the 4 best teams.
Fair enough. Paul, go ahead with what the stakes of this one on Saturday night for both sides.
Yeah, I think Ohio State has all the pressure on them because we just think, we've been told by the experts that Ohio State is just going to roll over them. So I do think that part of the game helps Notre Dame, except the problem is, and Heather's alluded to it, Notre Dame is down a little bit. They have some injuries, and they're going up against an offensive juggernaut. So Heather's scenario is really the only way. And quite frankly, it sounds great that they can lose by 6 and then beat Southern Cal and beat Clemson. But that's not going to happen. So we are spending a lot of good oxygen here on a lost cause. Notre Dame is not going to be in the playoffs.
Write it down. I tell you what, the Pope just canceled that call. I mean, that's the one thing that just happened with you, Paul. You're making everybody mad. All right, Paul and Heather, outstanding as always. We'll have much more. Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.